Hey you, welcome back to Amusement ASMR, where thrill meets chill. Today, I want to visit one of my favorite amusement parks that I've loved all my life, California's Great America. The only amusement park in the San Francisco Bay Area, other than Six Flags Discovery Kingdom in Vallejo, but that's a bit too far north for me. It's over a 2-hour drive for me, so it doesn't really count. And it wasn't really my childhood park like this one was. And this is not to be confused with Six Flags Great America either. That one's in Chicago, on the other side of the country. I'm talking about the Great America in Santa Clara, California, which is now owned by Cedar Fair, who also recently merged with Six Flags, not to be super confusing. But when I was growing up, it was actually owned by Paramount. It was Paramount's Great America. And I have so many memories of going to this park as a kid. It's where I first popped my rollercoaster cherry and where my deep love for theme parks really first began. So, now that I'm back in the Bay Area, I've treated myself to a season pass here, and I finally made my first visit of this season recently. So, I'd love if you came with me to relive that glorious day. Now, I wasn't able to get a printed park map there, unfortunately, but I did manage to print this version. Now, I know I've printed other park maps in the past with more success. This one is a little janky this time. It's a little low quality, so apologies in advance for the slight blurriness. You can't quite make out all of the words. I know it's a little hard to read in some places. I did, very, very silly, I did try to enhance some of the words with pen, but it was such tiny writing that it was really hard to make very clear lines, so it is a little hard to read. But we will do our best to point out all the places I went and the things I did and help you navigate that on this map. It's also, I recognize it's the 2022 park map. This is the best image I could find online. There is a more recent park map, but it was just very complicated to get it printed. So, after many trials and tribulations, this is what we have to work with today. So, bear with me. This visit was in 2024, not 2022, but this is what we've got for our navigation today. But nearly almost everything is the same, so for our purposes today, this should be just fine. Okay, so I arrived at the entrance here to Great America, California's Great America, at about 10:15 a.m. Now, this park opens at 10 a.m., which is nice that it's a little bit later, so you can get a bit more sleep. I still like to try and rope drop as much as possible, but I was just running a little late that day, so I got there at 10:15, which is close, but not exactly a rope drop. But still plenty early for how busy the day was that day. It worked out really well. So once I walked through the main entrance, I made a beeline immediately for the most popular ride in the park, or one of the most popular rides, which is Gold Striker, right here in the front. It's a big, amazing wooden roller coaster and one of the newest coasters in the park. And I got there at 10:22 a.m. and there was a little bit of a line already. It was really the only ride that had any kind of a line early in the morning, so it was definitely the right call to rope drop this one first. got in line, got through the ride pretty quickly. It was maybe about 15 minutes total, including ride time. So really not bad. So I got off that ride and decided to kind of stroll around the rest of Celebration Plaza. I love looking at the carousel, especially looking at the little pond here with all its beautiful fountains and the carousel in the background. It's just a beautiful view, very iconic, nostalgic for me. Then there's also the Celebration Swings, which are a classic, lovely ride. Walked by that and made my way all the way back this way. There are many other good rides over here, but, well, one in particular that I'll come back to, and a couple over this way. But the next ride I needed to ride was the other really popular ride in this park, which is also a very, very new ride in the park, and that's RailBlazer right here. It's this red ride, and it's a single rail roller coaster where the train is all single file, which is really lovely. I love riding on single file roller coaster cars because then you really feel like you have nothing around you, no people around you, just the wide open sky as you sail around and fly around. And if you manage to ride in the front car, oh my gosh, there's nothing in front of you, nothing to the sides of you, and it truly feels like you're flying. I love that experience. And lucky for me, on this day, there was nearly no one there. Maybe a handful of other people. It was a walk-on and no one in the front row, which is crazy. So I got to ride very front row, front seat up this ride, and about half of the train was empty as well. So it was shocking how empty it was in the morning. And this was at about 10:40 a.m. because I did a little meandering on the way there. So 40 minutes after park open, no line whatsoever, and it was no problem at all to get the front seat. So that was really amazing. And just the most incredible ride. I think this is becoming my favorite ride in this park now. So then after that, I did a little bit of looping back around and walked by Berserker, which is a ride that has been there since my childhood and is also very nostalgic. So that was fun to stop and watch for a little bit. And Whitewater Falls here, which is a great log flume style water ride with a very large boat. Fits many people at a time, and it's very short. You just go up, around, and drop down. So, and there were already some people getting into line for this ride because it was shaping up to be a warm day. So, and then there's Extreme Flyer here, which is an extra paid experience. And then walking back through those, I doubled back over here to the ride I mentioned earlier in Hometown Square. This is Patriot. Now, Patriot is a seated ride where your feet dangle, but the track is still below you, so it's not an inverted ride. You're not actually hanging from below the track. The track is still under your feet, and that's interesting because this ride used to be a standing roller coaster where the track was below your feet and you stood up in the car, and it was called Vortex. And this was my favorite ride growing up. I used to love Vortex. I could just ride that ride over and over and over. I have a particular love for standing roller coasters, so it broke my heart that they changed this to a seated ride because they otherwise didn't change anything about it. They painted the track a different color. It used to be green and it used to be standing, and now it's just a boring, normal seated roller coaster, but with the track still under you, so it's not even exciting like an inverted coaster. It's okay. The track is still great. It's still an enjoyable ride. So I still wanted to ride it today. So I got in line at 10:50 a.m. here, and it was about a 10-minute wait, which technically it was a walk-on. Like, I got in line and there were like 3 people in line in front of me, but they were only running one train So we did have to wait for a bit for that one and the next one that had people already loaded in the lines to go through. So I had to wait for 2 whole trains to cycle through before I could get on. So that's why it was still a 10-minute wait, and I wasn't on the ride until 11 a.m. Now, I got off of that ride and noticed by this point that there were a lot of people walking around. The park was really hopping at this point. So I guess that means that rope drop hour is technically over. But I wanted to still try to get in some of my favorite rides before they got too busy. So the next ride I loved as a child, that's very nostalgic. It was my first big roller coaster I ever rode that really popped that roller coaster cherry that I mentioned, is the Demon, and that's up here. This was high on my priority list to ride this day. So I made my way over there, and to my great sadness, it was closed. I didn't realize that it was closed for refurbishment at this point. This is always a good thing to look out for when you're going to any park, is just to check what rides are going to be closed that day, because that did put a damper on my day, sadly. But I do love this ride. It is one of those roller coasters that's just good for, teens and older kids who are just starting to be ready to ride big roller coasters but aren't quite ready for something at the level of Patriot or Flight Deck or Gold Striker. Like, if they're just not quite ready for a super intense roller coaster, the Demon is perfect. It's a little easier, a little lighter, but it still has 2 inversions, it still has corkscrew, it still has some big elements, some big roller coaster elements, but it's a little slower, a little less steep of a drop. Just, it's roller coaster light. And that was my first one that really, gave me a taste that I never went back from. That gave me such a love for roller coasters that has lasted my whole life long since then. So it was my gateway roller coaster, basically. So very sad that was closed, but there's still plenty to do in this park, other things that I wanted to experience that I loved as a child, or that I want to ride now that they've been added. So I moved on down around the park this way, because then I decided to continue kind of this loop around the park this direction. So I moved over here and I walked by the Grizzly, which is a nostalgic wooden roller coaster from my childhood that has been there since I was a kid. And it's interesting that they have 2 big wooden roller coasters now, but I understand the distinction because the Grizzly is old and very rickety. I mean, wooden roller coasters by nature are very rickety, but the Grizzly really just takes the cake on that. It's on par, I'd say, with the Matterhorn at Disneyland. It's like a visit to the chiropractor. It's like a realignment in a ride. It's so shaky, and that it's not everyone's cup of tea. So since I discovered Gold Striker, I don't prioritize riding the Grizzly as much. It is still fun every now and then just for the nostalgia of it, but it also sometimes has issues in the morning and it doesn't open as early. So that was the case today. It wasn't going to open, they said, until about noon. So I just decided to keep going and walk by some of these other rides. Now, also around this kind of action zone area that you see here is Drop Tower. Drop Tower is your classic big drop ride, and it is very fun, but wasn't quite in the mood for that. I'm not always in the mood for just a straight drop ride. I prefer rides that keep me moving forward, where I feel like I'm flying in a direction, making progress, going somewhere. So just a straight drop isn't always high on my priority list. I thought about coming back to this maybe later today, but for now, just not gonna stop for that. There's also a lovely just kind of gallery, arcade of games in this area as well. That's really fun to play if you feel like it, but they also open later in the day. They weren't open quite yet at this time either, so that's also good to keep in mind. And then right next to Drop Tower is another ride I was really hoping to ride, and this one is new since my childhood. They've added Tiki Twirl, just a really fun big spinning ride that moves up and down along a hilly track back and forth while the whole ride vehicle spins that you're all seated around the edge of. I've ridden rides like that before and really enjoyed them, so I wanted to experience this one, but this one was also shut down for the day. Really bad luck so far on some of these rides today. And I mean, this is early in the season, but you know, the park is not open year round. So they do have an off season when they can take care of, you know, refurbish some of these rides. So they really shouldn't have any reason for rides to be down once the season starts. So I was quite disappointed that Tiki Twirl was not running. But that's okay. There's more to do. Other fish in the sea. So I kept going through Action Zone. And also right here next to Tiki Twirl is Eagle's Flight. Now this is one half or one side of basically a gondola that you can ride across the top of the park, which is really quite fun, and I used to do all the time as a kid. This has been here since then. And the other side of it is called Delta Flyer. Don't ask me why they decided to name it something different on either end. I see this in other parks where it's named the same thing at both ends. So for some reason at this park they decided it should be called Eagle's Flight here and Delta Flyer here. And it's just the same ride, but just two different directions. So I don't know, but I did not ride that today. So past Eagle's Flight. Next to it is this other really fun looking ride that is new since my childhood called Psycho Mouse. And it's your typical wild mouse ride that's kind of a smooth, flat track for the most part. Little dips here and there, but very sharp hairpin turns that kind of make you feel like you're going to fly off the side of the track. And it's a similar ride comparison here is Goofy's Sky School at Disney California Adventure. I did not stop and ride this one today, but not because it didn't look fun. It's because the line for this one was really long by this point. It's really interesting to observe which rides get really long lines. It's the slightly tamer, more kid-friendly rides, because this is a bit more of a kid-friendly park. So I did not ride Psycho Mouse, but that's okay. Other days, other times in the future, I will get that one. And also next to Psycho Mouse is Thunder Raceway, which is just your basic go-karts, not high on my priority list. And also next to it is Centrifuge, also a childhood ride, very nostalgic ride that's been there since I was a kid. It's really fun, spins you around. This one is quite similar to like Alien Swirling Saucers and Tow Mater's Jamboree and Cars Land. So it's kind of like that vibe, but not quite as fun of theming. But still really fun. But I did not ride it today. It just wasn't high on my priority list. So moving on, from there we walk through this lovely walkway right into Planet Snoopy. Now Planet Snoopy is the kids area of the park. And it is so adorable. The theming in here is just the cutest thing you've ever seen. And full of Snoopy and Peanuts characters, theming and details, and the names of the rides are so cute. You know, you've got Snoopy's Space Buggies, Snoopy's Space Race, you've got Lucy's Krabby Cabbies. I love that one. You've got Sally's Swing Set. There's just, you know, they've got all of the Peanuts characters represented. Let me bring this closer and see if you can actually read some of these names. You know, Joe Cool's Dodge 'em School, Peanuts 500, Planet Snoopy Construction Zone, that's a little play area, the Kite Eating Tree and the Flying Ace. So some very fun names of rides, and they've got a character carousel as well. Now, the character carousel, I'm actually a little disappointed in. I feel like this was a missed opportunity because it's just your typical carousel. It's just got your typical carousel horses but it's called Character Carousel in Planet Snoopy. So I feel like they should have had Peanuts characters for the horses equivalent that you can sit on in the carousel. I feel like you should be able to sit on Snoopy or, on Woodstock. That would be hilarious. Or on Sally, or on Linus, or on, Lucy, or on Charlie. Who doesn't want to sit on / with Charlie Brown? I mean, just be a great day all around if you got that experience. So I think huge missed opportunity with that character carousel. But I still think Planet Snoopy is adorable. But not today, because it's just me, and it's a little weird for an adult woman by herself to ride kids' rides. Nothing wrong with it if that's what you choose to do, but not what I was going to spend my time doing today. So instead, I decided to keep walking through Planet Snoopy and past the South Bay Shores area. Now this has a little entrance over here next to Planet Snoopy, and as you can see, it's all in purple, and this is a whole separate area of the park. It is included in your ticket, so it's not a separately ticketed water park, but it isn't always open. It opens for the season a little bit later. Unfortunately, this whole section was not open for me to go through, but it does have some fun rides in here as well. And then there's also some good eateries in here that can be really fun. I was kind of hoping that one of them would be open, South Bay Cantina. It's in this area right here because it's connected to the water park, but also has an entrance from the main park. But unfortunately, because South Bay Shores wasn't open, South Bay Cantina wasn't either. Very sad, because I was getting a little hungry by this point, but alas, it was not an option. So then I just decided to continue on through this area into the All-American Corners land, which is down this way through the blue. And there are a couple rides here that are also quite fun. Delirium is not super new, but I don't believe this was here when I was a kid, that I've definitely seen similarities to. I rode a ride like this in Australia, actually called the Claw at Dreamworld. That was quite intense. And it actually kicked my motion sickness a little into gear, which doesn't normally happen on rides, so I decided to skip Delirium today for that reason. It does look quite intense. And then right next to it is Mass Effect New Earth, which I know is really hard to read. I did my best to make that legible, but it's, I know, really bad printing, and then my janky pen writing over it. But that is an indoor 4D experience that is quite nice on a busy, hot day if you need a break from the heat, get indoors with some AC. But there weren't a ton of people in line to do that this time, so also not high on my agenda for the day. So continuing through All-American Corners is this lovely ride called Flying Eagles that also looks really fun. You can kind of control how high you fly. There are actually 2 rides like that. There's also Pacific Gliders over in this area. And both of those have a little control in the vehicle, and it spins around and kind of flies you outward from the center column. And then you get to decide how high you fly or how wide you swing based on that control. You know, it can be a milder ride or a more intense ride, which is quite a nice element. So that ride did look fun, but I did not decide to ride that one. The one I did want to ride in this area was also closed this day. What is it with all my favorite rides being closed? I really, really wanted to ride Orbit, and that's right over here. Now, Orbit is a very simple ride, like Berserker or Centrifuge. It's also similarly just a ride that loops around and around and around and around and around. And it's I don't know why. It was such a joy for me when I was a kid. I really loved that ride when I was younger. So I really wanted to experience it again and see if it, the experience still holds up as an adult. But it was closed. Just, this day. What is going on with this day? So no orbit, unfortunately. But moving on, I decided to keep going into Orleans Place. And this is a really awesome land that's been rethemed to this since I was a kid and is now full of New Orleans touches and eateries and theming. And in this park, it doesn't totally make sense, but in this park they have Flight Deck. This ride used to be Top Gun when I was growing up, and because it was Paramount's Great America, they owned the rights to the movie Top Gun. It's since been rethemed, but I like that they kept the general essence of the ride. It's still themed to, fighter jets and that concept. And the queue still has that element to it. It's just not quite as fun because it's not Top Gun. But it's still a cool ride. It's still really fun, inverted ride where your feet are dangling and the track is above you. And if you sit on the left side, especially the far left seat, when you get to this loop in the back of the track towards the end, before the brake run, you swoop really low and close to the water, and it's a really cool experience. So highly recommend the left seat on this ride. So I decided to ride this one, because this one is also nostalgic from my childhood. And there was no wait. It was amazing. It was a walk-on. And this is at about noon. I was shocked that there were very few people in line. There were, unfortunately, people in line for the front row, though. So I took the second row, and I got to sit on the left side. So it was still a great ride. Really incredible. And again, so surprised by what rides have gotten the long lines here and what rides haven't. Like when I walked by Delirium earlier, that had a massive line, but Flight Deck doesn't. So confused. But I rode Flight Deck, which was amazing, and then I strolled through the rest of Orleans Place. There's Orleans Pizza right next to the ride. There's the other end of the gondola, Delta Flyer, and there's a great bumper cars ride here that's been here since I was a kid, but has been renamed. It's now Rue Le Dodge, but the name is really the only aspect of it that's been themed to New Orleans. Otherwise, it's the same bumper car ride it was when I was a kid. And then a lot of really fun shops and other places to eat. And there's a bar here as well, but it was closed still. So I'm confused by what time some of these things open. Or if it's just, maybe the bar just wasn't opening that day because it was a weekday, not as busy. I don't know. So coming back through, I just loved walking back out into this view of Celebration Plaza and the carousel and the fountains. It's just such a gorgeous sight. And right now the park is all filled with decorations for a Peanuts celebration event. Now, on weekends and select days really, but that really means weekends, they also have actual entertainment and programming. And there were stages I saw dotted around the park that were set up for those, but it was not taking place this day, so I didn't actually get to see any of that entertainment live, but the stages look nice. I imagine it's very fun if you're coming on a day when that's happening. So I decided to keep going around the park this way up through Hometown Square because I wanted to ride Patriot again. It's right next door, and it's right here, and I do love that ride. Even though it's not the Vortex anymore and it's not a standing ride anymore, it's still nostalgic and still a solid roller coaster. So I popped back over here, and at this time it was a 15-minute wait. So still very short wait, still totally worth it. Now, by this point, I was very hungry. I definitely needed food by now. So I decided to hop through Hometown Square. Over here is a lot of food options in a row, but the one I like best right there is Auntie Anne's. And they often have some really fun pretzel options. They have your standard pretzels that are always good. I do like Auntie Anne's anywhere, anytime. But they actually had a special pizza pretzel on the menu this time that I just had to try it. I mean, what? So, recommend Auntie Anne's as a good food option, especially good quick snack food option in this park. And then, as I'm standing here trying to decide what to do next, I realize that the Grizzly is open by this point, and I haven't ridden it in ages. Let's see if it's still just as shaky as I remember. So I decided to make my way through Country Fair back to the Grizzly. Now, quick note about the County Fair area. There is a feature here that has been here since I was a kid that I love, and it's maybe one of my favorite spots in the park. And it's this gorgeous nature draped covered walkway that's just this beautiful long tunnel of greenery and vines and flowers, and it is so beautiful to walk through. And it's just this random bit of shade in the middle of this wide open area. I mean, I understand they added it there to give you a little shade break, because otherwise you'd be walking through the wide open sun for a lengthy period of time, but it just seems so random, placed right in the middle here. But it's gorgeous, and it's a lovely little escape just to walk through that for a minute. So I walked through that, of course, on my way to the Grizzly, and then I rode the Grizzly, which was a 35-minute wait at this point, which was one of the longest rides I'd experienced in the park so far, and that was a bit surprising, but it is a classic, and I guess I'm not surprised. The park was quite busy at this point, and oh my goodness, it was just as shaky as I remember, if not more. The Grizzly is a really intense, really shaky, but otherwise still very fun wooden roller coaster. Though I do have to say, it does not quite compare to Gold Striker. I still prefer Gold Striker, I think, to the Grizzly. And that's exactly what I thought when I got off of the Grizzly. I thought to myself, you know what? I need to experience the better version of that now. I need another wooden roller coaster ride that's not as shaky. So I decided to double back through the park this way to Gold Striker to ride that again. And I guess everyone else in the park had the same idea. I mean, by this point, it's the mid-afternoon, and it's the hottest and busiest time of the day. So Gold Striker was a 45-minute wait. Crazy. But, I was determined to get one more ride on this. So I did wait the full 45 minutes so that I could ride this again. And I have to say, it was almost not worth it. But worth it, still, I'd say. And after that really long wait, I decided, you know what? Let's knock out the, in my opinion, 2 best rides in the park. Let's do the other one I did at Rope Drop one more time, just to have a really good, solid, memorable final ride of the day. I decided, let's do RailBlazer one more time. So I popped on over there. It's nice and close, and to my immense surprise, it was a short wait. Now, I realized that's because it had gone down for a short bit, just some small technical issues, and it had just come back up. So that's part of the reason that it was a short wait. It was only a 10-minute wait. I got in really quickly, rode that ride again. Such an amazing ride. I mean, I didn't get the front seat this time, but still amazing no matter what seat you're in. It's a relatively short car, so you still get that same experience for the most part, no matter what seat you're sitting in. And it's just, I mean, I really do think this is probably my favorite ride in the park now. And with that, I concluded my day at California's Great America, ending on a strong note, then making my way back through Hometown Square, Celebration Plaza, and out the exit of the park. And it's nice on your way out, they have billboards showing you all of the festivals and special events happening throughout the year. like the one going on right now and others throughout the year. So, on your way in or out, you can get a sense of when those will be, which is really nice. And that concludes my wonderful, nostalgic trip down memory lane to California's Great America. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it made your day a little bit happier and tinglier and more magical, or at least more amusing. Now, if you don't mind, I'd love it if you could go watch another video, because that is how the YouTube algorithm works. So you can click on this one that future me has put on the screen for you right here. And thank you again for watching this one. I will see you next time, perhaps in that next video right now.